Hello there, a very good evening. Welcome to another episode of Face the Nation. It was Thomas Jefferson who said that government is the strongest of which every man feels himself a part of. Today, we are several months into the formation of a new government. We're in a new year, and we've got a panel of experts, of course, representing Sri Lanka's political spectrum to discuss on the pros and cons, the good and the bad that has happened since this government has come into power and where we as a country right now stands. Before we proceed to introduce this panel of guests that we have today, on my right we have Barath Arullsamy. Thank you very much, Barath, for joining us on the program. We've also got Thanuka Nandasiri from the People's Struggle Alliance. Thank you very much, Thanuka, for taking time off a busy schedule and joining us. We've also got Kusum Wijetilleke. Thank you very much, Kusum, from the SJB, joining us on our program. We have Kesarralal Gunasekera, former parliamentarian. Thank you very much, Mr. Gunasekera, for joining us on our program. And we've also got representing the government, of course, the National People's Power, parliamentarian Lakmali Hemachandra. Thank you very much, Lakmali, for joining us on our program today. So to get right into the opening statements on the program today, let's of course start off with Barath Arullsamy. Now, Barath, at the presidential election and the parliamentary election, you pledged your support to President Ranil Wickremesinghe. There were several demands that you made from the government or whatever government that comes into power. Several months have passed now since the NPP government has taken over. Have they lived up to what you expected them to do, or have they fallen short? Where do you stand now?
Thank you for having me today in this show. Actually, we had a lot of aspiration. In our last general election, the Tamil Progressive Alliance, led by Honorable Mano Ganeshan, contested the election in SJB Alliance with the aspiration to take a kind of a working plan explaining to the people, even though despite the mandate given to the president. But however, the people were very clear and they gave a mandate to the NPP government. Honoring that, we had given sufficient time to the NPP government to at least formulate some workable policies and some action plans. So what I would say on the perspective of the Democratic People's Front and the Tamil Progressive Alliance is that, you know, we represent the most vulnerable community in the country. So even though the government has given a lot of promises, and even in upcountry, the central part of the region, not only the plantations but also up until to north and east, the government got an unconventional support from the Tamil community people and also Tamil speaking community, both including the minorities, Muslims and Tamils. But we don't see a political solution being placed to mitigate the long-standing issues which they have already accepted, and also we don't see a kind of a working plan towards that, especially considering on the plantation sector community. All are yes when we ask a question. They are saying, yes, you guys are vulnerable, you guys were like, should be looked after, but there is no plan has been placed forward to the community who they have given the mandate for. So we strongly believe the government should speak up, and not by some officials, but by the president or the prime minister. The top layer of the government should speak up about our fundamental requirement, the land rights, and also how we can evolve the livelihood of our plantation sector community, and also the long-standing issues of minorities being considered as minorities, not as Sri Lankan as a whole. So these major issues, we think, as a party who represent the thoughts and echoes of the minority community as well as the entire Sri Lankan community, the government should be very much vocal about that. And also, rather than, when we raise a question, just giving some, we need some more time. Yes, they need some time. I don't blame them. I don't want to blame or just to say that, but this 2 months time is sufficient enough, we feel, that to develop a policy or a working plan. Now, since you mentioned Ranil Wickremesinghe, when he took over the presidency in the crisis time, we were the citizens of this country were, given a timeline kind of thing. This is what we are going to, this so-called that Valpalama thing or everything was something people know, okay, we are going in this direction. But here, the sole ideology behind this NPP movement is transparency. But I don't think the government should be more vocal about their transparency in the policy making, should be put forward at this juncture. That is what our feeling lies.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Barath, but if I remember correctly, President Ranil Wickremesinghe also assured that the national issue will be resolved before Independence Day last year, if I remember correctly. So that timeline wasn't really met, was it?
No. What I'm saying is, it's not, as I told you, we should have a path where we are going.
A plan. Okay.
So the plan should be very much progressive, and also it should be, very much clear to the citizen.
Understood.
As now if we talk about the wages of the plantation sector workers. Now, if echoing on the thoughts of our leader Mano Ganeshan, he pointed out in the parliament as well, if you are increasing the salaries of the state sector, the government sector, okay, the plantation sector also should be included in that race. So how the government is going to work on that? We are also we are not saying you should do. We are also open for support and give some suggestions for the government so that they can evolve some workable mechanism in the benefit of the people.
Thank you very much, Barath Arullsamy. We'll get into details of those matters that were raised during the course of our discussion today. I now move my attention to Thanuka Nandasiri, representing the People's Struggle Alliance. Thanuka, now the People's Struggle Alliance, of course, was born through the Aragalaya. There were many known political activists, many known civil activists, student activists in your party. There was some sort of a call from your party also to bring in more new people into parliament, or to bring in a new opposition, just like a new government was brought in. But standing from where you are right now, are you happy with how things are going? Is your party content? What are your concerns about everything that has happened over the past few months?
For a start, I have to say that our demand was to change the structure, not the persons or not the heads. But the people actually change the people, the representatives. Our demand to elect new people to the parliament mean the people who can change the structure, not the people who follow the same way. Now, from these 2 months, when we see the government, how they act, from these 2 months, we cannot see they are going to change the structure as we expected.
So, Thanuka, when you say change the structure, what do you want the government structure to change to? What's the new structure?
In our policy, we suggested interim plans, and subsequently we propose the ultimate plan as the socialism. That is the structural change we believe.
Okay.
In our alliance, that is a structural, subsequent, ultimate structural change we believe. However, there's a interim measures we discuss about during our election period and during in the party. There are several interim leaders. When we see the government now, initially they said they are going to reconsider the IMF agreement. Now they are following the same, which was signed or which was agreed by Ranil Wickremesinghe. That is not that is not what they promised to the people. In their policy agreement, they said they are going to reconsider it and they are going to discuss it again with the IMF. But there were several discussions, but the same agreement is following. And we and the people in the government always objected to the PTA. We all represented the people, the segment who want to abolish the PTA. Now I heard they are going to abolish the PTA and they are going to take a new law, bring a new law. So that is not they represented earlier. And even the day-to-day issues they face. Now that is not the way the people and we expected from the government to handle those issues. So therefore we think now they are following the same way, and within these 2 months they have shown that they are following the way gone by the Ranil Wickremesinghe and the other political parties. So
thank you very much, Thanuka Nandasiri from the People's Struggle Alliance. We now move our attention to Kusum Wijetilleke, member of the working committee of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya. Kusum, Samagi Jana Balawegaya is the biggest party in the opposition. All political parties, amidst the issues that are ongoing in the country, are also preparing to face the local government election that is due to be announced hopefully soon. Given that the Supreme Court also gave judgment saying that it's a fundamental right of the general public to vote at the local government election, and that those who postponed the previous local government election had done so at the expense of the fundamental rights of the general public. So, Kusum, on the topic of the upcoming election, there are discussions about the UNP and the SJB now joining hands together again. I think the SJB, the statement was that all parties in the opposition to come together to contest the local government election. What's the plan here? What's the motive? What's the end game? Your time starts now.
Thank you very much for having me. I think the motive is clear, right? If a party loses and loses badly, they have to reorganize, they have to reassess. I think there is a broad push within the SJB to form an alliance with some other political parties. The leader of the opposition has been very clear that there are ongoing discussions with all the parties that are in opposition. And I think that's a pretty fair assessment, because that's actually what's happening. Of course, we have to also remind our viewers that the SJB's very reason for existence was the failure of its initial parent party, the party that we broke away from. Right. So any alliance going forward must consider whether the reasons for that split, the failures of that party, if there's any fixes, if there's anything that's changed. So that's something that I think needs to be looked at. Going in for the provincial council elections, the UNP and the SJB's alliance brings together a network, right? The SJB is a young party, 4 years, 5 years. It's accomplished a lot, even though right now we are struggling, we lost seats in the last election. But having a grassroots network takes time. The NPP succeeded with the JVP's grassroots organization as much as their own. So the SJB also needs to grow a grassroots organization that's more effective than the one we have, clearly. Okay. So the UNP and these other parties, the alliance conversations will focus on those things. Of course, in all honesty, I've been critical of even the past alliance of the SJB. I was on this very show and I criticized the Samagi Jana Sandhana. I said that I didn't personally see the benefit. And so this is pretty much the same story I'll have to tell you once again, is that I have my doubts. But I can say that there are certainly many people within the working committee and within the party that are supportive of this, and that everything that's happening thus far within the SJB has been done with the compliance and with the permissions of all the committees that are involved.
So, Kusum, according to your understanding, these alliances, these new formed friendship, old friends coming back, all of these are done in the name of reorganizing the party to prepare for an election, or is there a more in-depth discussion about what the real plan is or should be for the future of Sri Lanka?
It's like Dishal, and I don't want to comment too much on that, because we've seen a paradigm shift in Sri Lankan politics, right? We've seen the political center shift completely towards a completely new party, a completely new formation. The SJB itself, some of the members have talked about an alliance of right-wing parties, or how to unify the right wing of Sri Lankan politics. Okay, the SJB ran on a platform of a social market economy and social democracy. So, I mean, I don't want to get into the ideological weeds. I know most people don't really care about those things. But the fact of the matter is that the SJB has a certain liberal economic formula, right? And the social market economy and the social democratic principles mean something. And in a Sri Lankan context, we have an IMF that is asking for some of the same principles. Our social democracy is simply a way of saying that we don't believe that health, education, and the poorest people in our country should be dependent on rich people, organizations, charities, religious institutions. We don't think that's the way to go. We think that the state has, that we believe in the social contract, that there is something called the social contract. And this is a guiding principle of the IMF. The IMF has told us, increase social safety nets, SSN, increase cash transfers, increase spending on education, increase investments in healthcare. So I think the SJB has always been the moderate centrist party that's following much of the economic consensus. So just to go back to some of the questions you asked my previous colleagues as well, with this current government, I think some of the problems that, my wife tells me I'm too critical, that I go on the show and I'm always criticizing. So I don't want to necessarily criticize, but I want to say I hope, like my colleague said, that the political center has shifted. The Arullsamy created a shift. But we need to see a different way of doing things. So this cannot be an incremental change. And I think something that's forgotten is that Yahapalana in 2015 was also meant to be a shift. It was also meant to be a new way of doing politics. But what we got instead was more incremental changes, to maintain political capital. And I worry sometimes in the initial months of this administration that we might be seeing some of that same incrementalism as opposed to living up to the great expectations that were contained in the NPP's own manifesto.
So would you be happy with more drastic change, more groundbreaking?
The problems in Sri Lanka, and actually I watched your program last week. I found it very, very, very interesting, especially the part about taxation, right? Unfortunately, one of your panelists said that, we shouldn't worry about revenue, that we've reached or we will reach the IMF's revenue targets. The IMF's revenue targets of 15% are clearly negotiated from a political perspective, because taxing people in Sri Lanka is very difficult. It's almost counterculture now at this point, especially people with higher incomes, right? We have now entering the third year of a revenue-based fiscal consolidation. And our corporate tax to GDP is still 2%. That is not a good sign, right? Personal income taxes is still nothing compared to VAT, indirect taxes. Okay, we are making the customs is providing something like 1.5 or 2 trillion rupees in revenue. That is all that should come from personal income tax, right? These are the things that this government, that Yahapalana with their 2018 income tax bill, these are the things that were supposed to change. Everything you buy, you pay VAT. We discussed briefly about vehicles being the same value as an apartment, right? And there's still demand for these vehicles. Where is this heading? We have a fiscal issue. So they say vehicle imports provides revenue. But the IMF themselves say, yes, but you have to manage it because there could be pressure on the rupee. So in which case, if there is a possibility of pressure on the rupee, why are we releasing these restrictions ad hoc, so soon, blanket removal of restrictions. It serves a very small class of people. So that gives you some idea, right? Why is that very small portion of the country being catered to? But where is the conversation about social safety nets? Where is the conversation about healthcare? Where are these historic investments that we're going to get? And when you talk about investing, my friend talked about, Barath talked about the most vulnerable communities in the country that he represents. Where is the money going to come from to increase these things? Because we are in a fiscal crunch, right? The answer is clear. It's not my opinion. 2% corporate tax to GDP is low compared to peer group countries. So it's not Charlan saying it or Kusum saying it. It's just the fact that we are under par for low middle income peer group countries. And if we want to be more successful, we need to see that ratio tick up. That's what more successful countries have ended up with, whether I like it or whether you like it. But that conversation somehow, I'm not hearing it in the media, I'm not hearing it by and large in the commentary.
Thank you very much, Kusum. Much to discuss with the facts that you raised in your opening statement. We now move our attention to Kesarralal Gunasekera, a former parliamentarian. Mr. Gunasekera, now you've, out of everybody present here today, you've had the most number of years under your belt in Sri Lanka's political scene, let's say. I think Kusum said that this is a paradigm shift for Sri Lanka's politics. I'd like to start off with your thoughts. Is this really a paradigm shift? Do you have hope for what's to come?
Look, of course it is to some degree, because if you study the elections of the past, it has always been a fight between the two major parties or three major parties. But for the first time in this country, all three major parties were shut out, and a minority party, I would say minority, it was 3%. It was brought right to the wrong. So it's a paradigm shift, all right. As to why that happened, the three parties are responsible for that. Not even the years. It's the people who voted them. So we need to understand that's what the people wanted, and they have to deliver. And they will deliver, I feel, because they have come for that. So far, they have performed well. Of course, 2 months is a shorter period to fundamentally see as to whether they have performed well or not, because this is the latter part of 2024. Technically speaking, I feel they should give them about 1 year to really analyze their performance. But so far, they are okay, but because I feel that they are doing well. But the only thing is 2025, the midway or the latter part, they will always have problems, as he said. If you permit, I don't think they'll permit these easy imports with regard to vehicles. I don't think they'll clamp down somewhere down the line when they realize that because I think the IMF also has said targeted 1 million.
1 billion.
1 billion, yeah, sorry, 1 billion initially. So they will keep a tab on that and ensure that the dollar does not go up to that degree. In that context, they should be okay. Taxation, yes, is a big problem, because income tax department, I feel you need new, I think it's far more better to set up, and I said this before as well, set up a new income tax department. Because you know why? You pay these people the salary till they retire. Still it is worth 25%. They can do a better job. I feel that that's the way forward. There are so many things. We all need to understand it's a new culture that they have brought in. The NPP has brought a new culture. Now, the people wanted that culture. Don't blame them. The people wanted that culture. So they're doing it. And when they're dying to do something, you criticize them and undermine them. It's all rubbish. It's nonsense. We need to understand this is our country. Yeah? Everybody needs to understand it is our country. And I still feel Sri Lankan identity is the only success way out for this country. All sectors need to understand Sri Lankan identity is the way out. If you bring out with any other identity, you will have problems. Various people will come out with issues. So you have to, because I have been in this structure since 1978. I studied everything. And I can see how you got to understand whether it's the north or the east. People changed, huh? They moved away from the standard politicians and they voted with the NPP. Why? Because they wanted so many things. Huh? That's a change. Who knows? They may want Sri Lankan identity themselves as well. We have to think on those lines as well. We need to move forward. We need to think fresh. And Clean Sri Lanka is the ideal way forward. You know why? Don't target it to certain sectors. Clean Sri Lanka, anything can come into Sri Lanka. Clean Sri Lanka, I feel. Anything can come into Clean Sri Lanka. If you give them, you earmark sectors, you're restricting yourself. You should never ever do that. Anything, Clean Sri Lanka. Connect it to Clean Sri Lanka. That's the only way. We need to do that. We need a shift. We need to think new. All those things have to happen. I'm not part of the NPP, but I feel that they must be made successful. We have to support them to make them successful.
But Mr. Gunasekera, now, do you see that kind of support coming out of the other political parties in Parliament? Because, like a board of directors, the Parliament of Sri Lanka, for the Parliament of Sri Lanka, the best interest of Sri Lanka should come first.
Correct.
But do you think that is happening, or is it still traditional politics for a certain sector?
So far I feel it's traditional, but I feel that it has to change. Now some of the issues
do you see it changing at least?
They should change, no? Next election, nobody can say, look, here somebody else is going to, what rubbish. That won't change. 5 years, they are set for life. The question here is, are we supporting them and taking the country forward the way because that is what they're planning to do. And that is what the people want. That is what Arullsamy wanted. I feel they are the beneficiaries of Arullsamy. Which is good. Because Arullsamy wanted to change, so they let them do the change. And we support. If you do something wrong, criticize them, that's all. But support, because we need to, and then later you can decide what you're going to do.
So the NPP has come under criticism for several of the decisions that they've made. Do you think any of those criticisms are really justifiable? Let's say, for example, taking away houses of former presidents. Is that an act of revenge?
Well, let me put it this way. If you study the constitutions of the past, none of these leaders were afforded offices once they retire. None. Not even under Solberry. Nobody was afforded houses. J.R. Jayawardena himself brought this in. But he never took a house. Neither did D.B. Wijetilleke. But if you analyze the performance of house seeking after retirement, you realize the leftist movement have been clamoring for houses, whereas the rightist movement have not wanted houses. I feel houses are not, because it's the public that pays for that now. It's the public. And the law is very clear. Appropriate house or an allowance. If you can't give a house, an allowance. It's not a right. And there is nothing called official bungalows or houses. In this country, there are only 4 official residences. 4. President, Prime Minister, Speaker, and CJ. Nobody else has official bungalows and official residences. Only 4 in this country. Even ministers don't have official residences. What rubbish! That is fundamentally abuse of power. Absolute abuse of power. They are trying to change. Support them. Don't fight them. They're trying to do the good thing. That's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kesarralal Gunasekera, a former parliamentarian. We now finally move our attention for the opening statement from the representative from the government, parliamentarian Lakmali Hemachandra. Lakmali, much was discussed during the opening statements of the other panelists here today. What are your thoughts about the performance of the NPP from the perspective, of course, as a member of parliament, but also from what you personally wanted, the kind of change that you personally wanted to see in this country? Has the NPP so far managed to at least, scratch the surface?
Thank you, Shalan. First of all, I'm very appreciative of Mr. Kesarralal's comments, because we rarely get those compliments from any opposition party. I'm genuinely very appreciative. And so to start off about whether as a party and whether I personally feel satisfied with what we have done, I think I personally am very satisfied. Because one of the, as Mr. Kesarralal was also saying, one of the main goals of bringing NPP into power on the side of the people, I think, was to create that paradigm shift that Kusum was talking about. To make sure that, we have always been doing politics in a certain way. So to change it, to bring more, let's say, ordinary people into power, bring new people into power and see how that works. So I think what we have been trying to do for the past, let's say if you take the presidential election, it has been almost 4 months. 4 months actually. And if you, from the general election, it has been 2 months. So what we have been trying to do is, first of all, to set a to set the precedent of a new political culture. And I think we have successfully done that. Even this conversation around houses or official residences for the retired the former presidents, it comes out of the actions that we have taken, right? We promised, it was in our mandate. This is not something that the president is coming as an act of revenge. This is the platform that we ran on. We said that we are going to remove certain privileges attached to former presidents and members of parliament, ministers and so on, and we have managed to do that. And I don't think that's an incremental change. I think it takes a lot of political will to do that. I think it takes immense, on the side of the people. If you look at what they have been trying to do and what they have been asking for over the years, for decades, it has been a struggle for them to get these things done, to make sure that there is a government that's actually cutting expenditure at the top without cutting expenditure at the bottom. And we have been able to do that. So that's not an incremental change. I think that sets a new precedent for a political culture. So whoever comes into power, let's say NPP is not in government in a few years or in a few, in the next term or whatever, whoever comes into power has to now follow this line, right? So it's a new way of doing things. And we have removed none of our ministers are taking their official or like he said, there are no official bungalows. There's nothing of that sort, so we are not taking that. Yeah, and they're not using this, police security and MSD and all of that. So unless there is some real threat to somebody's life, which at the moment we don't see. So there is no, like, we are not using public property or state resources to enrich ourselves, which has been the tradition of political parties and political leaders over the years. So that's a huge change for us, the fact that we managed to do that. And I think bringing NPP into power would have done that. I don't think any political party in the parliament or outside of the parliament can say that they would be able to do it this fast, this efficiently, right? And the second thing that we wanted to do was to make sure that during especially the past 2-3 years, there was a lot of economic pressure on our people, especially the low-income earners. So we wanted to make sure that there is relief for the low-income earners especially, and generally for people. And I think we have performed fairly well on that as well. We managed to increase Aswesuma, which was the scheme that was introduced by the former president, substituting Samurdhi, and we managed to increase those payments. We managed to make sure that school children are getting 6,000 rupees per month for school equipment, and now we have taken another decision to give them extra funding for purchasing school shoes, right? And I personally, I have seen, because I have worked a lot with low-income families, especially in the free trade zones, and I have personally seen mothers who struggle buying these shoes because they are really expensive. Shoes for schooling is very expensive, and so I think so you can see where the government is going. You can see where the heart of the government is, right? And we are working under so many restrictions. We are already in an IMF program, and there are certain restrictions that come with an IMF program. We have been very open about it, and yet we have managed to deliver. We have managed to sort of shift we are taking all the pressure now. Expenditure is cut at the top, I mean, like it's cut at the top, right? The president is cutting his expenditure, MPs are cutting their expenditure. We are the people who are cutting our expenditure. So even if you look at the appropriation bill that has been presented, you can see that the president has a significant cut in the president's office's expenditure. And so I think that's only fair because that's what we promised. And for the past, I mean, not just the past 2 years, during any economic crisis, what you see is people at the top, people who have the power, transferring the burden of any crisis to people who don't have power. People who don't get to decide whether they want to go through it or not in the manner that they are prescribed, right? So we are trying to turn it around. We are not saying that this is ideal. We are not saying that these are the, we are not trying to make people depend on subsidies. We want them to be economically empowered and included into the economy. And there are plans that will be coming up during the budget also. Again, under severe restrictions, we are coming up with plans to, execute economic inclusion, especially of rural development and, making sure that there is the wealth that is concentrated in the cities, especially in Colombo, is more devolved to the rural areas. So that was the second one, right? And I think even the electricity bill decrease 20%, and I think that's a universal subsidy for everybody. For families, for industries, for anybody I think that's a huge relief for the people. And even though there are, certain financial risks the CEB is taking, I think the government has advised that at the top, from the political leadership, there is advice to manage expenditure without transferring the cost or the burden to the consumers. If the PUCSL believes that the pricing can be reduced, then we should stick to it and go ahead with it. That has been but we have seen, if you look at the previous government, what they did was they just chased out the PUCSL when they suggested. So we have taken an entirely different approach to how decisions are taken, and we are leaving it. We are creating space for more independent, more inclusive decision making. And I think the last thing that I want to say is, there's a lot that we want to say, but the last thing I think the major achievement for the government is, I think Sri Lanka has more international reputation now, honestly, as a country. I think we are looked as a country that's entering a new development stage. Thankfully, we are coming out of bankruptcy, and so we want to end that period. We want to leave that behind us and make sure that we're never returning to that period. And make sure that we are going into a development route again, a more sustainable development route. And I think there are countries who are coming to support us, from India to China, Japan. So there are so many countries who see Sri Lanka as our reputation of being, we have a government that's not asking for any personal benefits or commissions or whatever that previously complained of, and it's easier to engage. In the sense, of course, the deals are harder. We have managed to we have managed to make sure that any deal that we come into with any any country or with any company or whoever is fair. So we have renegotiated some of the deals that the previous government has gotten into, and I think because there is no demand for anything other than good intent, good benefits for the people, national interest, these companies are also and these countries are also flexible with the Sri Lankan government now. I think they are also seeing that finally you have a government that is actually taking a more diplomatic, a more genuine approach to international relations as well, without trying to bargain between this country and that country. So I think that is good, and we are trying to move towards newer regions that we have not failed but maybe not thought of earlier, like the Middle East. We had a really good relationship with the Middle East, which fell apart unfortunately because of certain political trends in Sri Lanka. And then Africa also, they have a similar economic and political experience to Sri Lanka over the past few years. So we are trying to build relationship with them as well, with the African countries as well. So we'll see. I think we are moving in the right direction, and we have managed to do a lot within the 2 months. Unfortunately, the opposition is always talking about this crisis and that. I mean, that these are not crises. These are these are residual problems that we have from previous regimes, which we have to take on and resolve now. And we are not complaining about that. That is what we said we'll do. But of course, there's no point in blaming the government for everything that has gone wrong over the past few decades, right? These are issues that have sustainably developed over the year. The problems have developed, whereas the solutions are suppressed. So finally, we have a chance to talk about the solutions and get everybody to engage. And Clean Sri Lanka, of course, is one of the programs that we want to design. We have designed to make sure that there's more community participation, that people own the development of the country, and that at the local level there is a way for people to connect with local administrations, district administrations, because they see their own solutions and they have their own projects that they want to push, and government funding also, that there's a lot of bureaucracy in the way that people are treated. Unfortunately, the kickoff hasn't been, I mean, we have to admit, it hasn't been so great in terms of how the police has handled it. But I think we have taken, we are taking time to raise awareness among the people and among the state administration also about what Clean Sri Lanka is. It is not there to create distance between the people and the state. It's actually there to create a closer relationship between the people and the state. So we are trying to create a structure that will include. We have created a structure that includes people into the decision-making process. Civil society, activists, local groups who are interested in building their own communities and building their own, the concerns that they have. They have their own issues, and without making it a top-down decision-making process, we want to include them. So I think that's a new structure, and we want to, continue that. And it's not a project that will end in 1 year or 2 years. It's an ongoing. It's It's sort of like an ideology that we want to take to people and see how they connect to it. So that's. I think I made a fairly good presentation of what the government has been
Thank
doing.
you very much, Lakmali Hemachandra, parliamentarian from the National People's Power. Our two journalists, on to my right, Shihar Anis, and on to my left, Niresh Eliathambi. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. Let me start with Lakmali. Lakmali, I think you correctly said, like, you wanted to change the political culture and you are in that process. But if you take the grassroots level, the cooperative societies, in that election, I think out of 14 so far, you have lost 9 so far.
No, we have lost only 2. In Homagama and Kalani.
Today also you have lost 1, right?
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
Madam, some small one, right?
Okay.
But I mean, are you losing the plot?
No, I think cooperative elections are done very differently.
No, because during the last regime, these corporate elections were perceived as the bellwethers, right? That's the grassroots level, right? Bellwethers, like what's going to happen in the local election, local government election, provincial, and then to the parliament, right? That's how you all also won, right? Yeah. So, I mean, why within these 2 months, what's happening?
No, I mean, I don't think Madampe, I'm not sure that there's a cooperative or whether this is like a branch of a cooperative.
It's not Madampe, it's really.
So anyway, what I wanted to say was that cooperative elections have their own voting list. They have their own system. So these are very subjective cases. And this I mean, we had the same discussion during the general election when LPTA Bentara LPTA local government election happened. And even then, I mean, I think I came here and I said that these are different dynamics. And it's okay. I mean, people vote for, I think in cooperative elections, we find a trend of the opposition running as independent groups combining all their forces together. And so that is one of the reasons.
Point your question. That's the point.
Yeah, so that's a new trend. So and we are sort of our political machinery is within the government, and we are trying really hard to make sure that the government is not falling apart and all of that. So we haven't really got into the local government electioning or campaigning or any of that, right? So at the moment we are making sure that we are gradually stabilizing the country and making sure that people are getting the benefits that they should have gotten over the years, like especially during the past 2 years. So I don't think it's a threat. I mean, we are not.
So what you say is like you're still not unpopular.
Of course not.
Within
The
this
government is not unpopular at all.
In Homagama, I saw that there was a poster campaign by the NPP
Probably.
seeking support for their candidates.
May I also just come back on a few points the Honourable Member of Parliament raised? This idea that now we have this new political culture is a little bit, I have to agree to disagree respectfully. The President
Well, not
is
in
currently the finance minister. Now the IMF in their governance diagnostic report themselves, they said that this is not good for governance. Anyone can see this is not good for governance. So why in the midst of an IMF program, debt restructuring deals, is the Minister of Finance the President?
Because he's the
in this
most
case?
reliable person in the government.
I'm sorry,
100%.
so
No, I mean,
the
like,
Minister of Finance
First of
is
all,
an
we are not-
independent
we are not-
entity, you know, and how many departments does the President have
There are
under
two
him?
deputy-
I understand that the President is an extremely capable, popular,
Kumundu.
charismatic person, but the fact of the matter is one person should not have the responsibility of 7, 8 departments under them, especially the Finance Minister. When the IMF diagnostic report, not me saying it, so it's the IMF that are saying that it's a bad idea, it sets a bad precedent, and there have been bad outcomes from the President being the Finance Minister. But so that's just one thing of this new political culture. So I'll just,
no,
if you
just
don't
answer. We
mind,
have 2 deputy ministers to the finance ministry. 2 deputy
sure,
ministers.
but why is the main
who are very
Minister of
capable
Finance
and
still the
work
President?
constantly. I
That's
mean,
the
I know them
question.
personally, both of them.
That doesn't
I
answer
know
the
how
question. It's
they.
a concentration of power, isn't it?
No, it's not a concentration.
It is. The
of
President
power. It is
being the
not a
Minister of Finance is a
concentration of power.
definite, and the Minister of Defence is a definite concentration of power. I'm sorry, that's
And
a
we
definition.
don't subscribe to everything
That's
that IMF says
definitionally
also, to
a
be honest.
concentration of
Yeah.
power.
Yeah.
If I can also talk about this political cultural change, right? Now we are criticizing Mahinda Rajapaksa's housing situation, but the Supreme Court named him and many other individuals with regard to the economic collapse. There's new evidence that's come out that every single every single governor of the central bank, including Mr. Nivad Cabral, wrote to the finance minister, consecutive finance minister, and told them, seek IMF support, go for a debt restructuring, that we are going to collapse. Members of the government, with the responsibility of the country and of their constituents, ignored the professional advice of the bureaucracy. These were some of the main parts of the NPP's campaign. It was the NPP that said that the previous government was extremely corrupt. They are the ones who said that there has been mass corruption at every ministry. But when they've come to power, all we've heard about is this 4.6 million rupee house that Mahinda Rajapaksa has. Is that, and then when you talk about a new political culture, the Sri Lankan Airlines chairman is a member of the director board of Hales. Hales was one of the 5 companies that bid for Sri Lankan Airlines, had a failed bid when Sri Lankan Airlines was put on the market. The NPP government came in and took it off the market and put it under the leadership or the stewardship of a member of the party that
Former
unsuccessfully bid. Former member.
Yeah, so that's his job.
We have the Western Province governor, who is an extremely rich individual. What is his position, experience to be the governor of the Western Province? It's a political position, right? Is this a new way of doing politics? I'm just being honest and critical here because I think these are necessary questions, because we have great expectations here.
So,
of the
Kusum,
NPP, right?
what would be better?
For example, if you want a professional in charge of a professional organization, you choose someone from the industry. With all due respect to Mr. Sarath Ganigod, who I've met, is a very reasonable gentleman. He has a great record at Hales, but it's not appropriate. You know, it's not appropriate. It's the
Why,
same
on
as
what basis
it's
that
the
he had
same
a
as
job at
Charita
Hales?
Ratwatta, who is a very close confidant of Ranil Wickremesinghe, being the chairman of Sri Lankan Airlines. What's the difference here?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Because I think this is a fair question. If we were going to sell Sri Lankan Airlines, and we have officially said that Sri Lankan Airlines is off the market.
Ladies and gentlemen,
we
Sri
are-
Lankan Airlines is one of the biggest drags of all the SOEs in Sri Lanka. Right? Whether we sell it or not, it should be run professionally by professionals that have experience in the
Can I
aviation
answer,
industry.
Kumundu?
That's
Can
just
I answer, Kumundu?
and him is
So, you know,
sorry,
what
it was-
yes, so this is a fair allegation. I would take
not
this
an allegation,
allegation
I'm
very
just asking.
seriously. If the government has said that, you know, we are going to privatize Sri Lankan Airlines, and we are taking on a policy of gradually breaking down Sri Lankan Airlines and eventually selling it to Hales Corporation, right? Which is not the policy of the government. The government has, what we have done is We have taken a capable individual from the private sector.
So you think it's appropriate? I'm just asking.
Hiring
I'm sure
people
it's
from the
capable.
private sector is appropriate.
It's
Why
appropriate that his company that he was director board of,
That was his
that's
job.
also
No,
led
but-
by Dhammika Perera, who's also a member of the
I know,
SLPP,
this is
was their
just-
presidential candidate. You don't think there's
This is
anything
why
inappropriate?
I'm very
So
appreciative of
I
Mr.
have to
Kesarralal.
leave it to the audience. This is a new way of doing
just to be
politics. I'm
fair-
afraid I don't
That was his
recognize it.
job.
It's the
You
same way of doing
Just to be
politics.
fair, Kusum,
There's nothing new
We
in
are not
politics.
selling it to Haleys. We are taking people. We are taking capable people who have been working with
Capable
Haleys.
people,
Please,
yes,
can
we
I
should
answer
be-
because you keep
Okay,
interrupting?
Sorry, my mistake.
Yes, because I want to make this very clear. If we have hired a person who has been in Haleys to run Sri Lankan Airlines.
Has he
right?
run an airline
No,
before?
But Kusum, no.
he has run a
In
very
all-
profitable business
Has he
before.
run an airline?
Right? Who has run an airline before in Sri Lanka?
You're saying that you couldn't find anybody
who
that's
has run an airline before in Sri Lanka?
So
The
it had to
government.
be a member of the Haleys
Who
board?
has
The
run an airline?
government.
Can you
No,
name
but-
somebody who has run an
Who
airline in Sri
was
Lanka?
Peter Hill a CEO of Sri Lankan Airlines? Was he not?
No, but Kusum,
And I don't
judging
think
by
the previous
judging.
is-
Can I just answer because
please, okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Yes,
please.
Lakmali.
The Haleys, we have Sri Lankan Airlines was supposed to be sold to Haleys.
No, it
We
was
have
one of
taken
the,
it.
was
We
one
have
of the
we have
that bid for it. Okay, that's
like you
incorrect.
said.
That's
I mean,
not accurate. Sorry.
if nevertheless Haleys wanted Sri Lankan Airlines,
Oh,
let's just put it
right.
that way,
Right.
right? And we have taken it off their deal, and we have brought a director who we think is very capable to run Sri Lankan Airlines. It's still a public property. Whatever the profit that Sri Lankan Airlines will be making is coming to the government coffers. It's not going anywhere, right? This is not an abuse of state resources. We are not breaking down Sri Lankan Airlines. We are making the operations profitable. That's the whole aim, right? And they are finding faults with this one appointment based on the fact that this guy used to work for Haleys. I mean, this is what I said. This is why I'm very appreciative of any compliment that's coming from the opposition, because this is just nitpicking. This is,
sorry,
and
but,
you're assuming a lot. You're building up a whole story.
I'm only
that-
asking you for a
Can you-
simple question,
is
but
there any-
I have to tell you that abroad in international
Can you
standards.
suggest a CEO then?
It's not my job to consider. I don't have a
Lakmali,
that's
I mean,
not my
if you're
job.
making
But if you're
let's
going,
get into
I'm
the
not
other
making
questions,
allegation.
Lakmali.
I'm just
Lakmali,
saying
now,
that it's inappropriate, and I think that's a fact based on
one of-
international standards.
It's not a fact.
You wouldn't
It's
have a
just your
company, a major
opinion.
company, bidding for an airline and then unsuccessful bid at one.
No, but I
2
think-
months later,
I mean,
the
he's not
chairman.
taking it
I think
home,
I think
he's just
I think we
working for
could
Sri
I think we
Lankan
could
Airlines.
really
It's
see.
not a
we
new
could-
way of doing politics. That's all I'm
He's
saying.
just
It's really
working
not.
for
Can
Sri
I
Lankan
continue my
Airlines.
critique on the first answer because there's a few other things to mention. What happened to the VFS scandal? I thought that was one of the things that was open and shut case, right? So how did that cabinet paper come to the cabinet? Why was it accepted? Why did we divert revenue that was meant to come to the government to a foreign organization? All those questions, and I haven't heard the government discuss the VFS at all, so I'd like to give you the opportunity to tell us about what the government is doing regarding the VFS.
I'll answer that when my time comes. I don't want to keep
Lakmali,
answering you. That's
now the people had great expectation in NPP, and you promised of a lot of drastic changes in policies. But if you take the economy, you all are going with the previous government
We didn't
policies.
say that we are going to quit IMF. That's
No,
very
I'm
false, yeah.
not. I mean, you said that you'll basically negotiate for a separate
provide an alternative DSA.
new DSA, right?
Yeah,
in the
we did.
manifesto.
Yeah,
We
that's
did,
right.
yeah.
So
No, you have. Sorry.
so basically you basically, I mean, you have not upset the apple cart, which is the economy, right?
Yeah.
Which is good in a way,
Yeah, I
right?
mean-
So what my question is like, that's basically kind of that's not something the people expected, right? The your voters expected, right? So if you take the cost of living, the inflation is low because what happened in the previous government, the interest rates are low, right? Everything, I mean, the macroeconomic indicators are seeming to be favoring the government, and the debt restructuring is also now done deal,
yeah.
right? But how do you see the economic challenges this year? I mean, the last 2 months you have not done any drastic changes. How would it go in time to come?
Economic challenges.
Yes.
I think the major challenge that we have is increasing export revenue for Sri Lanka and building up on industries that will give us export revenue, right? That will increase our export revenue.
So what are you going to do for that?
So that's why we have to be honest, this year we have very limited chances of pumping money into that, right? But we are trying to build up banking systems that will help industries, that will help small and medium industries, right? We have already undertaken a debt restructuring process for the small and medium enterprises, and we are trying to make sure that they are financed and they have enough money to build on, right? And the next issue that we want to address is the issue that everybody is talking about these days, about the ports. And we want to build the capacity of the ports, and that will, to expedite those processes attached to increase in the capacity of the ports, and also to improve testing in terms of bring the containers inside the country. There's a lot of testing involved in that, which is not efficient at the moment. So we want to improve the testing on that, and we want to make sure that revenue, that, like Kumudu was saying, corporate revenue collection is very low in Sri Lanka. So that is one area that we want to, maybe not necessarily this year, right, but we want to make sure that there is more revenue collection coming from the corporate income earners, and that high income earners are paying more taxes. That's why we started off with the withholding tax. That was one of the taxes that has been proposed, discussed and rejected previously, increasing the withholding tax, but we managed to implement that. And there are parties who complain of the withholding tax, but just to make sure that there are no people hiding their money inside fixed deposits and massive deposits, that this is one of the reasons that we have introduced the withholding tax.
What about the impending wealth tax, inheritance tax?
Those taxes are property tax. Property tax, the way that was designed by the previous government, is
they
not
were
going
supposed to be implemented from this year.
No, that's the thing. So property tax that was designed by the previous government, the rental residual, there was a imputed rental income tax. That tax is not going to be implemented, and we have already discussed with the IMF to tell them that we don't have enough data to actually implement a property tax, to successfully implement a property tax targeting the high income earners, right? So we need to build up those data systems, and we have asked for their help also to build up those data systems, and once we are ready to do that, we will move to, because we don't want to inconvenience middle income earners and low income earners with a tax just to increase the government revenue, right? Now we should move towards targeting high income earners. If you are going to bring a property tax, it should be targeting high income earners. At the moment, property is not properly registered in Sri Lanka. There is no database for that. So any taxation would have to go the way that the previous government designed it. That is not a fair way of collecting revenue, right? So we have stopped that for the moment, but we are definitely going to design a property tax with more information and more data that will target high income earners.
Can I translate?
Definitely, yes.
Sure.
No, how the withholding tax do not affect the citizens of this country. It affects only the high income earners.
Taxation affects everybody in the country.
That's what.
Tanuka, I just want to ask now.
But interestingly, this is one of the taxes that apparently IMF and the leftist parties in Sri Lanka are both against.
Agreed upon.
Tanuka, I want to pick your brain on this. The president's visit to India and China, right?
Yes.
How do you see the foreign policies of the government? I mean, you being from kind of a leftist mentality party, and then coming here after this people struggle. I mean, how do you see? I mean, one of the key things Sri Lanka has messed up in the past was foreign policy. We have been kind of either being pro one country or pro another country, right? Though we said it's a non-aligned policy, we could not maintain that non-alignment, right? How do you see the current government's foreign policy?
They are going to explain this as a non-alliance policy because they are now visiting to China and to the India. Therefore, they are going to show that. But initially, the JVP is the party who always against Indians in interference. They challenged the handing over agreement to the IOC, the Trincomalee tanks. Now they are going to work with India, and they said that they are going to improve those tanks with India. And in the same time, they went to China and now they are going to establish another refinery in Hambantota. So now we believe they bring Sri Lanka into the fight in between China and India. Now, without having a non-interference, non-involvement policy, foreign policy, now we place Sri Lanka in between China and India, because now once they disagree with India and they oppose the Indian intervention, now they agreed to work with India, and in the same time they are
But
offering...
Thanuka, those are commercial projects and investments. Aren't they good for the country? I'm just asking from the perspective of investments.
Investment are good, but the problem here is the foreign policy. Now the government put Sri Lanka in between the struggle of India and China. That is the issue. In the surface it sees that we are non-aligned, but here the JVP is the party who opposed Indian intervention. Now they have agreed to work with India.
But there's a lot of change. Even people have changed, right?
Maybe.
Are you referring to 88, 89 and all that? But that is a very long time ago.
Not 88, 89. Yeah. Even very recently, they filed a case in the Supreme Court challenging that handing over agreement. IOC handing over agreement. Right? Now they are going to offer that to the India. Now the party policy has been changed. And in the same time, now they are going to offer another refinery to China. That is why I say that this is to balance both countries.
No, you actually can't balance that. I mean, we should understand something, right? What we have seen in the past. I mean, the Sri Lanka is not located in between China and India to balance. Right? Sri Lanka is located next to India.
Yes.
Which means whatever happens in Sri Lanka in terms of security of the region, that also have an impact on India, right? So I don't know, I mean, balancing, I don't know whether it's the correct word to say balancing. But I would like to pick Mr. Gunasekera's view on that. I mean, the geopolitics and, how the government is handling it.
But the question is this, I still feel that we have a non-aligned policy. There are certain instances where you're forced to do certain things, because you got to understand commerce is the way forward. You got to understand that commerce is the way forward. So you make decisions. Somebody might interpret as being aligned to a particular country. I don't think so. And so far he has won the hearts of 2-3 countries, which are very powerful countries, which is a good sign for the country. We need to support all those things. And you got to understand, in a lighter way, what Kusum said about the president taking over the mantle of finance minister. The entire opposition was saying, okay, you have inexperienced people. He would have thought there are only 2 or 3 people. So might as well I take over finance, otherwise they criticize that also. That could be a reason.
Kusum, yes.
I'll just come back on that briefly.
Yeah.
In a lighter way, Kusum.
No, of course. I think what we were told was that the NPP was full of the country's top intellectuals and, the university, the cream of the crop. But now you're telling me that there's not many people with experience and the president has to be the defense minister, the finance minister.
No. So what I said
I'm not making a joke. I guess we have different sense of humor.
On a serious
No, but Kusum, on that point, I'm just querying. Do you think it will be better to bring up this criticism once they've actually had some time to perform, instead of prematurely, bombarding them now and stifling their space to make decisions the way that they seem fit, and is not inappropriate completely.
I think the fact is that in life the principle stands regardless of the outcome.
Okay.
If something is wrong, it's wrong. If something is inappropriate, that is, even if AKD becomes the greatest finance minister of all time, it doesn't change the fact that right now it's inappropriate, because we have a country that's had a very recent past of concentrations of power and their impacts on our country. We are here because Gotabaya Rajapaksa concentrated power in his office, concentrated power in parliament towards himself, and everybody voted for those beautiful tax cuts and that agricultural policy. Everybody said he's the smartest guy, he knows what he's doing. That's why that's why the IMF said, it's not that I am saying it. It's not that everyone knows I have something against Ranil Wickremesinghe, that's a different story. No, I have nothing against AKD. No. I have said on your show many times that I like AKD. I think AKD represents perhaps the most charismatic new Marxist style of leadership. I've said that before. And I also want to clarify here to my member of the government, the NPP is like every other party, like the SJB, the UNP, they have members and a wing that is more progressive than the rest. There are some who you could say are regressive in every party, in the SJB as well. Openly I say. In the NPP also there are reactionary elements, there are extreme elements, there are progressive elements. There are elements within the NPP who have called the IMF a neo-colonial institution, that we are prisoners of the Washington Consensus. Not my language, their language. I'm repeating the NPP language. Okay. Now that's, when you ask me about alliances, I'll be clear. I would much rather the SJB ally themselves with the progressive elements within the NPP than align with themselves with this one seat party in the UNP or any of these other so-called right-wing parties. I would much rather do that. But I also think that we have to give them time and space, and that's why I started this program saying my wife always complains that I'm too critical, right? I started by saying that now you all got me to be critical, and now you all are saying, that I'm too critical. But I respectfully ask one of you members of the journalists to ask the member of the government what their status is on the VFS scam, and whether they are willing to give us any idea of why it's not even being talked about really in the chamber.
So let me ask, Lakmali, there are a lot of scams which the government is investigating, or the arms of government.
I think on that point, before you pose the question, I think we've just got the alert that former Minister, I believe,
Arullsamy
has been arrested by the CID in connection with the financial fraud. Of course, he's not been found guilty of anything. It's just an arrest.
Allegation.
But that has also happened.
Now we're
Continue,
talking.
Viresh.
Right.
So, I mean, you have to ask to be honest, you have to ask the Minister of Public Security what's happening with the VFS scam. I mean, I have no personal knowledge of it, because like you said, there are so many scams that have been investigated. Like Ramana Pradarshani is arrested, I don't even know under what fraudulent, because there are so many things that are being investigated, right? And I have previously also said this, we are not making this media play. People keep asking, why aren't you talking about it in the media? And I think that has been done during the Yahapalan government, and it led us nowhere. So we want to make sure that these are thoroughly investigated, and people who are arrested, there are cases filed against them, prosecuted properly, and there is finally sense of justice in the country, right? So we are not even if you look at whatever that we come and talk in the media, we don't really talk about these cases.
But what about the president saying about Mahinda's house in the media? I mean, it's unnecessary, right?
Why is it unnecessary?
He could have done that.
The president is attacked every day. I mean, I was actually wondering, when we talk about systematically removing rice shortages, when we talk about systematically building up the country, right, then we are attacked saying, you should have done this with one strike of a pen, these are the things that you can do with 2/3 majority, right? We are attacked every day for being systematic.
But that's the same thing JVP also did when they were in the opposition.
I was about to say, I hope someone said it.
We are attacked every day by the opposition for being, taking a very realistic, systematic, non-media play-oriented approach to, issues, right? However, when the president actually comes and says, the former president is living in a state-owned building, really massive. I mean, the details of the house has been given to the media, I think, by now. It has been refurnished several times, and it's a lot of money. People should know this. People should know why these people are making such an issue out of everything that we do, right? Because otherwise, people, like you said, we have the only force that we have behind us are people. We have to make sure that we want people to know why we are being attacked every day. These are the people who have a vested interest in getting NPP out of power, right? And we don't want to people are assume that we are being very, timid. We don't have the power. We have 159 members in the parliament. We have a very popular, strong president, right? We are just being lawful, systematic, and we want to do this the right way. Otherwise, there is no reason that we are scared of anybody. There's no reason that we can't, instigate. Once you say these things out loud, then they attack us saying you're doing media play, you're trying to, win popular support. Of course we need popular support. Why don't we need popular support? Popular support is the only thing we have, right? We don't have the support of strong media companies. We don't have the support of the business elite, right? We have to struggle all of them. We have to struggle with all of them. Like if you look at the pharmaceutical pricing issues that has been going on, right? These are strong companies. There are strong companies behind all of these issues, and we want to make it right. We want to fix the system, and the only support that we have is people. We don't want to make them doubt the government. We want to make them know. They have to know why the Rajapakshas or whoever are behaving, and they want us to easily forget what has been done, right? If you look at the opposition's rhetoric recently, it's always about forget what has been done, stop blaming the previous governments, while still living in such mansions funded by the public resources. They have to come and tell us that, stop, forget about what has been done. No, we don't want to take that rhetoric.
Are the issues in governance far greater than the NPP expected when it was
It is
running
much
for
worse
office?
than it can. I don't think even people we don't want to scare the people by telling them, these are the issues in the government, because we have to own it now. The state as it is the state machinery that we have to work through, right? So we don't want to vilify it, or we don't want to do that. That's the easier way to blame the bureaucracy. There is a bureaucracy in the country, and if you look at the country and the experience and the fate of the country for the past 2 years especially, you can understand that there hasn't been much that's done about anything, right? We have been just living off state resources and maintaining the status quo, not doing anything new, right? And we haven't done anything to solve any of the problems that has popped up. So we have a serious crisis in every sector. In every sector, if news keeps popping up, right? Every day there is a problem, and the opposition wants to throw it at the government. We are fine with that. We'll deal with that. But yes, there is a crisis in governance, in the sense that there hasn't been much done about any of these issues for a really long time. If you look at the rice issue, if you look at the port issue that I was just saying, you need to build the capacity of the ports. We are an island nation, and we have been boasting about the port for the past how many years, but we haven't built the basic capacities of the port, right? There hasn't been any government initiative to do that. And there are issues in the IRD. Tax collection is not just because people are it's not just the tax rates. There is no political will within the IRD, or there is no political will within the state collecting institution, the revenue collecting institutions, to make it fair and go after the people that they should be going after. But then there's no point in complaining. Who else? We can't hire new people, put them there and do it, right? We have to work through the system. There's no way of doing it otherwise. Even if there was a revolution, this is the system that we have to work with. So the only thing that we can do is to make sure that we make it better every day, and that there is proper oversight. This is why I keep saying it's good that these issues are talked about in the media, right? Because people think it builds pressure on the government. It doesn't actually, because the government also wants to resolve these issues, right? As much when there's media pressure, when there's pressure within the public about issues that are real issues, then we can also there's pressure on the government also to make sure that the state bureaucracy is performing better.
Is the master plan going according to the manifesto?
Yeah. No, to be honest, Niresh, this is why, if you look at the first state of address that the president did after coming to power, he said that, there has to be structural changes done in the country, and we will get there. But to go there, we have to first make sure that we are in a stable government, right? So all these investments, that's like the Sinopec refinery that's coming to the government, the interest from the India, interest from Japan or Middle East or whoever that's coming to the country, it's coming only because we have a stable government. If that falls, our people are at risk, So we don't want to, this is why I kept on saying, we want to make sure that we have a stable government and we have prioritized that, right? But having said that, we also want to start a process that will eventually in the sense not in 100 years, which will gradually shift the business of government into more structural changes. That has to be done very carefully. We can't rock the boat too much as we stand. Incrementally, yeah. Some things we can do, like the way we behave, we can change overnight. The way we use state resources, we have changed overnight, right? But then we don't want to break down systems without making sure there are better systems to replace it, right? And this is why, like I said, this is why we have started Clean Sri Lanka also. We don't want to take a top-down approach on replacing them also. Better systems come up with more inclusive governance and more ideas from the people. And I think we'll get there. We'll get there with support of the people as well.
Right. I think we should talk more about Clean Sri Lanka.
Shalom, may I say something now? You raise a valid point. There are certain issues where she feels that the media has to take upon, which the media is, I'm not referring to you all, which the media is not doing. This simple case of the house, no media has taken it up. Because you know why? If you go into this matter, these are all illegal cabinet decisions. Absolutely illegal. There is a cabinet decision with regard to a particular president, I don't want to mention names, which is challenged in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court decided even a cabinet decision which is against the law is illegal. Illegal. And you cannot sit in a cabinet where the decision is going to benefit you. How can you sit in a cabinet where the decision is going to benefit you? These are decisions that have been taken, and they are fighting, but the media is silent. They don't want to touch those things. And the country should know.
Regarding the decision that you spoke of, I think we give quite wide publicity for that decision.
Nobody. What is the story behind this whole operation? Do you know that this is a house which was given to a particular president who retired? Yes.
And upon retirement, during one of his final cabinet meetings, he chaired the cabinet.
No. That came subsequently. He took over this house. But then subsequently, once he came into parliament, and then towards the latter part of the term of Maithripala Sirisena, he was appointed prime minister. At that cabinet decision, he took a decision to amalgamate two other houses, which is illegal. Because when a house is given to you as ex-president, that's it. You can't ask for anything else. So these are illegal things, no? Nobody knows these are illegal things that happened in the past. And these are huge. The quantum of money is close upon 1 billion.
I think President AKD said it's 30,000 square feet.
That is
massive.
No, this is Maithripal.
He himself, the question is this. The person who is occupying the house himself submits a cabinet paper. He himself submits the cabinet. The cabinet paper is still there in the press. He himself submits the cabinet. He's going to benefit from that. He doesn't understand you can't do that. And you call other people inexperienced.
We should talk about that. No, we should talk about the inexperience as well. I want to ask a question from Barath, who has been silent for a while.
I just carefully observed.
Barath, that's the best way.
Barath, the upcountry Tamil people, see, though you didn't support President AKD, people actually kind of voted for him, right? And there were conversation between the president and the people, where president said, your people, your community people are being used as slaves or employees, in shops and in Colombo. But what has been done so far? Do you see kind of anything being done with regard to that, or any policy changes?
Actually, no. when I was carefully listening to all this conversation here. Now, Honorable Parliamentarian referred this Clean Sri Lanka concept. So, I refer back where, since mentioned, I think President came to Hatton, he had a, massive meeting, Talawakere, if I'm not mistaken. He was telling, the plantation sector youths are used for exploited in domestic work and so forth. But when we see this Clean Sri Lanka concept, the President, when he took over the office, his first statement was to, he's going to abolish the executive presidency. And when we talk about the Clean Sri Lanka project, it based on the presidential power vested on him in the articles of her constitution. So, I
think he promised towards the end of his term.
I'm not saying. Tomorrow, this thing. What I'm saying is, now the president has an executive power to make a decision and to adopt a Clean Sri Lanka program. When I carefully studied that, how the things are going to work, it's based on 3 areas, if I'm not mistaken: the social, environment, and ethical. So this entire system change, which I feel that it is the interpretation of this entire Clean Sri Lanka project, not just only cleaning the environment. I would like to request the government to start this entire system change within the most vulnerable communities in Sri Lanka, which I wanted to, why I wanted that. When we talk about the changing of the political culture, as parliamentarian pointed out, we can't blame what the present situation of this community is not because of an individual or a group of individuals or a party or the government. Subsequent to our freedom, like from 1948, the system has created a kind of a volatile situation among the community. As I always mention, even in Mr. Niresh's shows, there is a plantation health, plantation infrastructure, plantation education, which is minimal, which is being allocated in the budgets. So what I wanted to do, to bring into the national mainstream, this Clean Sri Lanka concept can be used as a tool to incorporate them into the national mainstream. And also, when we are talking now, we don't, we were a group of people. We didn't, participate in the civil war. We don't want a separate state or separate ideologies or not like that. We want to be a part of Sri Lankan community, Sri Lankans. We have to identify fully into the system. So, but in this devolution of powers, which this environment issues now. Recently, I saw some good initiative of cleaning environmental things by one of their colleague parliamentarian in Nuvarli district. Just to go and clean these things, but it shouldn't give an impression that this entire project is cleaning the environment. As you correctly asked, this whether there is a progressive measure has been taken towards the plantation sector, I think it's still a question. As I told you.
So, what is the apparatus that you would like to see for the plantation community's issues?
Yes.
Because it is a disadvantaged community, now, and also for other disadvantaged communities.
Yes. First and foremost, we need to, fixate the fundamentals. Always we have to distinguish about the facts and the fundamentals. So when we understand the fundamental aspiration of our community is to have an economic liberation or economic stability. So for that to achieve, they should come out of the dependency model where the regimental work mentality or the plantation mentality, and they should have the ownership of the land. So for that, what we are requesting is a piece of land for their own right. We are not asking for the 1 million population who are residing in the estate, which we are asking only for the people who are living in the lined rooms, which are badly affected. Now, Mr. Naresh, to explain the facts, the need for individual houses is nearly 215,000. Already 65,000 houses have been built by various projects like Indian funded, Sri Lankan government funded, self-built houses, people who built themselves houses. So 65,000 is there. So the balance 160,000 plus houses been required for this to completely transform them from the lined rooms to a separate housing scheme. So for that, I think, if I'm not mistaken, nearly the plantation land has been utilized for the entire plantation cultivation is like nearly 700,000 hectares. So out of that, nearly 200,000 hectares are used for plantation cultivation. We are asking less than 1% for this entire housing need. So, if the government can, develop a plan for that, because it is not a new task. When we were in power, when we were holding offices, we developed a plan, identified all the, lagging areas and the requirement. It is in their,
But Barath, this plan now through several governments,
Yes.
it has been there,
Yeah.
but it has not,
No.
happened.
I'm telling about the recent governments. So I was part of that. So we developed a plan. When I fought for that for 10 purchase of land for the Indian housing, which commenced 1,700 houses. With much difficulty, we got that 10 purchase of houses. And also in the good governance period, late Minister Minister Manoganeshan and Minister Digambaram, they got the 7 purchase land, entitled for the plantation sector workers. So that is one aspect. And second aspect is like, this plantation industry as a whole. Now I'm talking about the plantation workers coming out of the plantation, administration. And the plantation sector as a whole. We don't want to, tax the plantation companies or the plantation owners and, just to talk about the workers only, on isolation. I'm talking about the plantation sector as well. The plantation industry is a 390 million, million economy. So it creates more revenue to our country. When, as correctly mentioned about my colleagues, when the bad policy decisions been introduced in even President Maithripala Sirisena and President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, this cultivation, the agriculture component got very much affected. Banning the glyphosate and this organic fertilizers. So it affected. So there are now, when I during our election campaign, when I spoke to a lot of plantation companies, they had a utmost trust on the government, like NPP those days. It is a agriculture oriented government, so they will allow us to grow more. So we have to provide a suitable facility to grow more. Now, I observed today's in Parliament also, opposition leader pointed out this palm oil crisis. When now there are some companies who are requesting cultivation in the southern belt of palm trees. So let the government do a feasibility analysis whether it is threatful for the environment. If it is a profitable agriculture, let them give the opportunity to expand that where we can produce more and take for the domestic consumption also, if possible we can export. So and also the third point about our land policy as a whole, since you mentioned about the other communities as well, our land policies and also our employment policies. Now, when I was the member of National NLAC, National Labour Advisory Council, then Minister, we were emphasizing the government. The Labour Act is totally outdated. Now, I'll give an example. This entire plantation sector workers up until 2021, all these issues which was raised, which were discussed on the collective agreement. After the company subrogated the collective agreement, there is no collective agreement. When there is an issue crop up between the employer and the employee, when we go to the Labour Commission, there is a lack of statutes which is applicable for this entire issue. I think nearly 40 laws which are in the Employment Act, nearly 16 are active. Within that 16, only 8 are applicable for plantation sector workers. So I think it's a serious need. I strongly believe the present Labour Minister was an active person who was taking down these labour issues in the past. He should give more consideration bringing into law reforms, especially on the Employment Act. And also there is a lack of safety, especially in the workplace safety for women who are working. So in this Clean Sri Lanka concept, which can be incorporated, this kind of a system change, rather than like giving some some kind of a just a cleaning concept or removing some parts from vehicles. I wanted to see the government is adopting new methodologies to the system. And finally, the last part, since you mentioned about when President came and just gave a motivational speech on our youths who are working outside the districts. The job security and working in a hazardous environment is still a problem, because the plantation tea industry is the only industry where you open the door, you have employment. Despite the fact that people are migrating to other districts or other countries, then there is a fault in that system. So the government here, they should discuss with the stakeholders. Even we are ready to come and support the government in whichever ways they need our assistance. So they can develop a plan and incorporate them into a clear framework where they will be not to migrate from other areas, and if they can establish more working environment, it will be an easy way forward for the younger generation in our country.
Thank you very much, Barath, Arullsamy. We have to now cross over to the final closing statements of the program today, as we're running out of time. I'd like to start off with former parliamentarian Kesarralal Gunasekera. For your closing remarks, you'll get a time of 2 minutes only. Your time starts now.
Well, Shannon, I feel what the NPP has done so far is to, as I said before, to introduce fundamentally a new climate for a change. And if we all get together, we can change the culture as well. And that cultural shift will be for the greater good of the country. Now, there will be so many people who are working against it, but in fairness to them, you must understand that they have been very, very tough with regard to all elections. They have been fighting alone now. Never ever did they align themselves with any other party. Now, no sooner they win elections, can you see the alignments that have been discussed right along? Why? Because the only way to survive is through alignments, which is not successful at all. That's why if he asked about this cooperative society, I didn't want to mention, but she came out with this. How many parties have aligned themselves against one single party? I don't think it's fair. So the question here is, we all need to change. We all need to change. If you don't change, you can never ever build up this country. From 1978, I'm seeing this. 1978.
Quite a number of years before I was born.
And when are we going to change? And that's not true. We need to change, because any government that comes in, our first thing is to, can we support the government to take the country forward? can we support the government to take the country forward? If we don't have that attitude, we are doomed. I think that is exactly what the question lies for everybody, including all parties, that they must align themselves to support the government and take them forward. Get them to succeed, because all of us have failed, no?
The problem is
all of us have failed. Try to ensure that they succeed. That is a success story.
Thank you very much, former parliamentarian Kesarralal Gunasekera. I now move my attention to Thanuka Nandasiri from the People's Struggle Alliance. Thanuka, your closing statement. Your time starts now.
When Lakmali says all parties are seeking the collapse of the government, I want to say our criticisms are based on policies, and we don't want to see the collapse of the government. And we are not here to help any other party who have stepped away by the people, and we always base our criticism on policies. And when Lakmali says that we have gained the international reputation, I have to say that we are the second country among the other countries who are similarly circumstances. Now we are paying more interest for the debt we have already obtained, and that is not the reputation we seek as the people. And the other thing, when my friend says, now they are actually we also stand for the policies my friends proposed, but however the Ranil Wickremesinghe or this government has failed to give at least the pay hike asked for the upcountry people, 1,000 rupees per day. And when we see the IMF, we always stand against the IMF, and but the government following that process, and we always say that is not favorable to this country and to the people. And the tax structure, that is why I ask, are you whether the withholding tax affects the entire country? It affects the people in the country who are the laborers and who earn very low income. That is not the policy people expected. You don't go behind the people who defaulted. Before you impose taxes to the people, you agree to go behind the defaulter, but you are not doing that. And again, you are implementing several taxes on the people who are suffered for years. And you have agreed to a IMF policy which Ranil Wickremesinghe followed. From that, you have agreed which are not favorable to the people. Now, as a example, I have to say ISB agreement which Ranil Wickremesinghe wanted to sign. Now the government also said they are going to sign the same agreement. But from that, we have agreed to pay higher interest, which was not even in the original agreement. And in that agreement, as a dispute resolution method, we have agreed to change it from US law to UK law, which is not favorable to the people. Therefore, that is why we always propose and we criticize the government. You agreed before the people, you have to reconsider it. Our position is no, there is nothing to reconsider. There was nothing to reconsider. You have to exit from that policy. But however, at least you are not doing what you agreed, and you always put the people the pressure, and again the prices of the most important things, food and the school items. Now those are in higher prices. Now you have to think about that. You don't you keep your hands away from the large scale rice mill owners. Now you say that they are not. Yesterday the president said, now they are not keeping stocks. Is that true? That is not true. But the government, without discharging the thing they promised to the people, now you implement the other policy which is not put before the people, and that is why we criticize them. And we are not here to support anybody who was swept away by the people during the last elections.
Thank you very much, Thanuka Nandasiri from the People's Struggle Alliance. We now move our attention to Barath Arullsamy from the TPA. Barath, your time starts now.
Yeah. Quickly pointing out the recent international relation development. When you all shoot out the question with the government and my colleague over here, you know, Sri Lanka had always had the policy of non-alliance movement, and also, but in the recent past, when the comparing president's visit to China and India, is a little bit contradictory on the, you know, the agreements or the promises which we made to the international stakeholders. It is not about, like, you know, telling one thing to our people in the election stages and selling something to the countries. This is very different gameplay. So it is very important for, as a government, as a state, we should have our reputation. It's very with much difficulty we are gaining our reputation. You know, the India now, the globe is concerned on the global energy. So energy is the main stake. So we being a market-oriented economy, so it is very important to use the energy consumptions very wisely. And also the India is developing a India Middle East a European economic corridor, which is, you know, contradicting with the Belt and Road Initiative. So now are we going to support both of them is a question. And also we have agreed with the Indian government, we are going to develop the Sampur solar power also, which is a very good thing, which we can, you know, create renewable energy market within Sri Lanka as well, and we can export it to other markets as well. So that what I'm saying is, working with India and the Indian economy is very vital, where we are not only aligning with one country, but also we are balancing the other countries as well. As I just wanted to point it out, in diplomacy, there are interests only, not like sentiments. So Sri Lanka and the government and as citizens, we should take the interest of every country, and we should develop our economy. Because only by, you know, taxation, you know, say this high pay tax or VAT or corporate tax is not going to make anything stable in this country. When the economy grows, when the people started flourishing, yes, definitely the burden will come down. So now the economy and our international relations are going hand in hand. It is the duty of the government as a responsibility citizen and the opposition. It is our responsibility to support the government. We don't want government to topple. We don't want anyone to topple or cripple. It is all our wish and aspiration is to Sri Lanka as a state to succeed to the next level. So we, the Tamil Progressive Alliance, as a party of Democratic People's Front, we are always ready to win our minority rights as well as our people, plantation communities' rights, and also support the government stabilizing the economy.
Thank you very much, Barath Arullsamy from the TPA. We now move our attention to Kusum Wijetilleke from the Working Committee of the Samagicana Balavagia. Your time starts now.
Thank you very much for having me, Shalan, and everybody. Like my colleague said, we all need to change, right? So I don't think that it is unfair of the opposition to ask the government to stick to its own manifesto and to sort of attack the problem in the same way that it said it would in the manifesto. In terms of this, because you started with, and I want to give credit to the People's Struggle Alliance, because I think they are bringing a left critique of this government, which is very necessary, because I never thought I'd have to see a different party bringing a left critique of the JVP NPP, which is meant to be the left party, but I think that's clearly what's happening. I'm very unpopular, you know, sometimes in my own party, because I speak about Yahapalnya in the context of the outcomes of Yahapalnya, right? I see Yahapalnya as, of course, I voted for Yahapalnya, I supported Yahapalnya. Yahapalnya was an improvement on everything that came before it, right? This current government is already an improvement on what came before. There's no doubt about that. But the point of the matter is we didn't elect Yahapalnya to be slightly better than the Rajapaksa government. We elected them to make real change. And this is the same thing that we are seeing all over again. What happened with Yahapalne? They went for austerity. They're still singing about consecutive years of primary account surpluses, but they achieved budget surpluses on the back of 11% tax to GDP, right? 11.5% was the peak, 2019 or 2018. So that is essentially austerity. There's no other way to put it. If you're not increasing social spending, if you're not increasing your tax revenue, but you are generating a surplus, that is austerity. That is what the NPP criticized about this IMF program in the last 2 years. That is why we are asking, what is the new strategy? Because you are complaining, she herself complained that there is a lack of fiscal space to do the things we need to do in our economy. Why is there a lack of fiscal space? It's still because we are struggling with 13.5% tax to GDP. The IMF has given us a target of 15% and we are going to do a somersault because we reach 15%. Countries with our structure that want to develop are closer to 18, 19, 20% tax to GDP. The more you develop, the higher your tax to GDP has to be, because the more you have to spend on services. Yes, the fact is that as a country develops, people expect better services, more services, a higher level of education, a better health system. So Sri Lanka has to understand this. We are not a big spender. People think Sri Lanka's government is just out here doling out cash to people. Show me these people that are just living off the government and having no job and just, having a tamash every day. That doesn't exist. That only exists in the minds of Colombo liberals and UNP supporters. Right? That's not the reality in this country. The reality in this country, Sri Lanka is a low spend on education. It's a low spend on health. It's a low spend on social services and social assistance. That's a fact. Not Kusum, Wijetilleke or Ranil Wickremesinghe. No one can change these. These are facts. I'm always giving you comparative indicators compared to other countries, compared to peer group countries. Sri Lanka will not survive until 2030 or 2032 based on this IMF program. So it's my hope and hope of, I think, everybody at this table, that this government succeeds in the way that it set out to, in the way that its manifesto suggested that it would. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kusum Wijetilleke from the Working Committee of the Samaggi Jana Balawegaya. Finally, for our closing statement, we move to our government representative, parliamentarian Lakmali Hemachandra from the National People's Power. Your time starts now.
Thank you, Shalan and Niresh and Shihar, right, for giving me time. And I think even within the IMF framework, even with it, I think at the moment our problem is not the revenue issue. The problem that we have is the expenditure cut that has been imposed as a result of the IMF program, which nobody is talking about. But anyway, for us the issue is we have to get through the IMF program. We are not going to, we said this before the election as well, we are not going to get ourselves out of the program because we don't think it's sustainable in the long run to create certain instabilities in the economy. That is the only reason, not because we think everything in the program is brilliant, not because we think, as Kusum said, not because we think everything in the governance diagnostic is brilliant, right? We take our own route, we take our own plan, we have our own system, and but we do negotiate with IMF. And we have already implemented certain changes. There are certain things that were supposed to be implemented during the 2025 budget, which have changed. Like you said, the property tax is not there anymore. And we have negotiated the Special Commodities Levy Act to be present. We have negotiated with them for social spending, increasing social spending as well. So there has been a lot of changes within the IMF program. And tax structure we have renegotiated. So there have been reviews and discussions, and we have managed to do certain changes. However, we don't think it's prudent to exit IMF at this point. And we are not going to lie about that to people, no matter how much pressure is on us, right? However, even within that framework, even with certain expenditure cuts that has been imposed on the government, we have managed to make sure that expenditure and revenue generation and expenditure both are much fairer than that was with the previous governments, right? We have, if you look at the targeted subsidies, we have increased almost all the targeted subsidies. We have reallocated resources to new targeted subsidies, and we have increased universal subsidies. We have like the electricity price, and we are in the process of trying to figure out a way to decrease the fuel prices, right? And then we have, even within the budget, like Kusum said, we have Education and health is very important for a country like us. It's the social capital that we have. We have to build on it. So we will increase education expenditure, and we have I think we have more than 500 million allocated for healthcare, and we have increased expenditure for estate sector, plantation sector, and we have prioritized expenditure. We are, like I said, we are cutting at the top, and we are trying to redistribute to the bottom. It's a tough task to do at this point, and this is the first budget that we have. We are like immediately running into a budget, and we'll see. I mean, we don't think that there are certain changes that we have to make incrementally to make way for changes that has to be made structurally, right? So it is very important for us that the government is stable, the economy is stable, because once we start to make these structural reforms, I'm 100% sure most of the gentlemen in this table will come and say, the economy is falling, this is rising, we are already seeing that happening. There is no space for the government to make any structural changes at the moment, right? So we are taking it very slow. And about the plantation issue, I mean, I always say this, that is a real issue that we have. And I think about the Clean Sri Lanka, what Barath is trying to say is because of the civil administration system that we have. There is a certain difficulty in incorporating the states into the Clean Sri Lanka program, and that is being looked into, Barath, at the moment. And we are already discussing with the plantation companies about wage increases. So there's nothing that we have said that we are not going to deliver, right? We have already discussing housing for the plantation sector, the Malay Tamil people, and we have members of the parliament who are very keen on these issues and who keep pressing the government also on these issues. So, I mean, this is not a government made up of just one community or one region. We have representatives from all communities who keep pressing these issues on the government as well. So I think, you are very well to cooperate on those issues. I think that's really, and about wages especially. Personally, that has been like one of my struggles as well, plantation sector wages, and I feel it should increase. Not just the plantation sector wages, private sector wages in most industries are not optimized, at least the minimum wages. So we'll see. We can't change everything within 1 year, but we have to create space for those changes. And that is what we want people to understand, that without we welcome criticism, we welcome proposals, and we welcome new ideas, but criticism in the line of we said DSA this, we said we have already explained all of this over and over again, but it keeps coming up. Somehow they think it's a good criticism to make when I don't know. So we are trying. We are trying our best, and we are improving the system. I believe we have already improved on the system, and the system will continue to improve. And about international relations, just give me 30 seconds on this. The non-aligned policy still stands. It is the policy of the government to be non-aligned. Non-aligned policy had nothing to do with India and China, and cooperating with India and China has been the policy of non-alignment, right? Both countries are good friends of Sri Lanka. They have helped us in the worst times, especially India during the economic crisis, offered us a lot of help. China has been a long-standing friend of Sri Lanka, and we need South-South cooperation. Global South has to cooperate. These are the emerging markets. These are the growing economies. We have to have a good relationship with them. Not just India and China, but like I said, the Middle East, Africa, even Latin America maybe. We have to have South-South cooperation, which is what we believe. This is why we have also applied to the BRICS, because we don't see, look what is happening in the West. It's going to be tougher on us in the coming months and in the coming years. So we need our friends closer, but definitely with a national interest at heart. And the Sampur solar power plant, we have managed to discuss and bring down the prices of the solar power plant that was earlier quoted, which shows that there is space for negotiation, there is space to improve these projects, which is what we are trying to do. And when we enter into new projects, we also have the national interest at heart. But that doesn't mean we are not going to talk with India or China. And to be honest, the relationship between China and India also improving at the moment. It's it's not necessarily deteriorating. So we hope it will get better, and it will be good for us also if it gets better. But anyway, our interest is not India's or China's. Our interest is Sri Lanka's interest. and we have to make sure that all these countries are very well aware of the fact that our government only represents our people, and whatever the relationship we have with them is strictly based on the mandate that we have. So that is how we will be going forward, and hopefully this year will be the year that we lay the foundation for a new economy, for a new governance system, and by the end of our 5 years term, people will be happy with us and will give us another 5 years term to make it even more
Hopefully.
better. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lakmali Hemachandra, parliamentarian from the National People's Power. Thank you very much, former parliamentarian Kesarralal Gunasekera. Thank you very much, Kusum Wijetilleke from the SJB. Thank you very much, Thanuka Nandasiri from the People's Struggle Alliance. And thank you very much, Barath Arullsamy from the Tamil Progressive Alliance. Thank you to our journalists for asking all the right questions, Shihar, Niresh. Thank you very much to all our viewers out there for tuning in to another episode of Face the Nation. Until we meet again, take care and God bless.